Electronic dance music.
Electronic dance music is a set of percussive electronic music genres produced primarily for dance-based entertainment environments, such as nightclubs. The music is largely created for use by disc jockeys and is produced for use in DJ mixes, in which the DJ uses a synchronized segue, or mix, to progress from one recording to the next.
History. Electronic disco.
In 1969 a song called Popcorn was released by Gershon Kingsley and is considered by many to be the very first dance track, McCurley and Flynn, 2013. The song would later be covered by the band Hot Butter in 1972 and become a bigger hit than the original version. Both versions using Moogs and analog drums would influence disco musicians and producers through a greater part of the 70s with its catchy groove. By the later half of the 1970s, recorded disco music began to shift away from traditional orchestration, electric bass and guitar, live drums, and acoustic orchestras, and increasingly embraced electronic instruments. Synthetic sounds from synthesizers and drum machines became a feature of many disco records in the late 1970s and into the 1980s. Notable examples include the 1977 collaboration between producer Giorgio Moroder and vocalist Donna Summer on the song I Feel Love, a groundbreaking dance discotheque hit with no traditional instruments. In 1979, the pair collaborated again on Donna Summer's highest-selling album, Bad Girls, which incorporated similar production techniques. In the early 1980s, disco's popularity waned, especially in the United States. Major U.S. record labels and producers abandoned the style, only keeping it as an affectation in the short-lived wave of funky R&B called boogie. However, in Europe, pop-oriented forms of disco continued evolving within the broad, relatively mainstream Euro-disco scene. This included the late 1980s peak of the upbeat high-energy style of electronic disco, dominated by a small cadre of mostly British producers. See Factory Records. Many producers and bands experimenting with electronic sounds were pretty much well established or already working and experimenting with electronic digital instruments, drum machines, sequencer, synthesizers, samplers, around this time, but the commercial availability was far beyond the reach of many studios or music producers. Although around this time acts like Gary Newman, Davo, and many disco producers which would go on to influence many EDM artists, would incorporate electronic digital instruments with analog instruments.
Post-disco styles.
Meanwhile, competing forms of dance music, some lighter and some more serious, but all focusing on electronic timbres, took root in the post-disco club scenes, yielding occasional radio hits. Although not as strongly influential as later genres, these styles were mainstays in the 1980s club scene. They include the hazy, studio effects heavy sound of dub, the strongly new wave-based, upbeat fusion genre synth pop, the syncopated hybrid electro-funk, often just electro, electro's Latin pop cousin freestyle, the dark, rigid sounds of industrial dance music, and an unnamed category of commercial, danceable pop and R&B. All these new genres and sounds were possible at the time because of the commercial availability of MIDI, which stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, became commercially available in 1983. It allowed for synthesizers, drum machines, samplers, and sequencers to communicate with each other digitally. All studios, even smaller ones and independent producers, could now afford to create new music genres sounds without using any live, analog, instruments. MIDI is still used today by many producers and artists, even in non-EDM genres. Partly to help satisfy the dwindling market for disco-based dance music, some 1980s disco DJs breathed new life into past hits via custom remixes and re-edits on reel-to-reel tape, and then took advantage of newly affordable electronic instruments and became record producers themselves, combining disco with other contemporary dance music styles. Without major label backing, their music evolved quickly to satisfy audiences in isolated regional club scenes, yielding, for example, Italo Disco in Italy, electronic body music in Belgium and Germany, house music in Chicago and New York, garage, techno in Detroit, and new beat in Belgium.
Democratization and recognition.
As alternatives to alcohol-fueled, meat-market nightclubs, the warehouse party, acid house, rave and outdoor festival scenes of the late 1980s and early 1990s were havens and proving grounds for the latest trends in electronic dance music, especially house and its ever more hypnotic, synthetic offspring techno and trance, some of which fed back into mainstream clubs and radio. These scattered scenes, along with a bustling second-hand market for electronic instruments and turntables, had a strong democratizing effect, offering amateur, bedroom DJs the opportunity to become proficient and popular as both music players and producers, regardless of the whims of the professional music and club industries. In the late 80s, rave culture began to filter through from English expats and DJs who would visit to Europe. However, rave culture's major expansion in North America is often credited to Frankie Bones, who after spinning a party in an aircraft hangar in England helped organize some of the earliest known American raves in the 1990s in New York City called Storm Raves, which maintained a consistent core audience. Coinciding at the same time, were the NASA parties in NYC by DJ Scotto, which was featured in the 1995 movie Kids film, and forthcoming was concert producer PAWN. Lasers in Pennsylvania, who later became the most well-known laser company at raves in East Coast by cross-promoting these rave events state to state as far south as Florida and Louisiana. After this, hundreds of smaller promotional groups sprung up across the East Coast such as Ultra World, MD, DC, Park Rave Madness, NYC, Geo Guaranteed Overdose, NYC, Local 13, NJ, Caffeine, NYC, Liquid Groove also known as Liquefied, GA, Columns of Knowledge, CT, Special K also known as Circle Management, PA, Zen Festivals, FL, Disco Donny, LA, Ultra Music Festival, FL, and later the West Coast, causing a true scene to develop. By the mid-1990s, the presence of electronic dance music in contemporary culture was noted widely, and its role in society began to be explored in published historical, cultural and social science academic studies. Commercially at this time, acts like The Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers began to get noticed by listeners, music critics, and mainstream music producers. This would lead mainstream performers to work more and more with EDM artists, and mainstream music producers to experiment with more electronic sounds. MTV produced and aired 2 TV shows that played EDM, Amp and The Grind. Both played and aired a large amount of EDM each episode. They also released albums with EDM on them named after those shows.
Mainstream success in North America.
Initially, electronic dance music achieved limited popular exposure in America when it was marketed as electronica during the mid to late 1990s. At that time, a wave of dance music acts from the UK, including The Prodigy, The Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim and Underworld, had been prematurely associated with an American electronica revolution. But, instead of EDM finding wider mainstream success, it was relegated to the margins of the industry. Despite the domestic music media interest in electronica during the latter half of the 1990s, American house and techno producers continued to travel abroad to establish their careers as DJs and producers. By the mid-2000s, a number of factors led to an increased prominence for dance acts in North America that was larger than previously observed. Daft Punk's performance at the 2006 Coachella Festival, which featured the introduction of a unique pyramid-shaped stage design and lighting rig, influenced what's been described as an arms race for visual effects in electronic music. Spin also considered the act to be a tipping point for EDM, as the appearance fueled nostalgia of the electronic era, and introduced the duo to a new generation of rock kids in attendance. In 2006 R&B artist, Missy Elliott featured material from Cybotron's 1983 electro release Clear on Lose Control, resulting in a Grammy Award nomination for American techno producer Juan Atkins, whose writing credit appeared on the song. In 2009, French house musician David Guetta began to gain prominence in mainstream pop music after the 2009 release of When Love Takes Over, featuring the vocals of Kelly Rowland, which was internationally popular on both pop and dance music charts. The success of the song led to further collaborations with other pop and hip-hop acts, such as Akon, Sexy Bitch and the Black Eyed Peas. His collaboration with the latter, I Got a Feeling, was a major success for both the Black Eyed Peas and Guetta. In the US, the song achieved sales of 249,000 downloads and debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 2, behind their previous single Boom Boom Pow. The song eventually reached number 1 on July 30, 2009, and Billboard magazine reported that the song, along with Boom Boom Pow, helped the group maintain a 17-week run at the top of the Hot 100, the longest time period achieved by a single, duo or group. The increased prominence of EDM was also fueled by concerts and festivals, such as Electric Daisy Carnival, that placed an increased emphasis on visual experiences, such as video and lighting effects, fashion, which The Guardian characterized as an evolution from the 1990s candy raver into slick and sexified yet also kitschy surreal image midway between Venice Beach and Cirque du Soleil, Willy Wonka and a gay pride parade, and the DJs themselves, who began to attain celebrity-like statuses. Websites such as YouTube and SoundCloud also helped fuel an increased interest in house and other types of electronic music, such as electro house and dubstep, both of which had also developed a hard rock-influenced sound popularized by producers such as Excision, Knife Party, Rusko and, most prominently, American dubstep electro producer Skrillex. In 2011 Spin declared the start of a new rave generation, led by names such as Guetta, Canadian producer Dead May 5, and Skrillex, that was followed by a new wave of mainstream consumers. Elements of EDM also began to emerge in songs by mainstream artists, as collaborations occurred with artists such as Afrojack and Calvin Harris. EDM producers and DJs also began experiencing success playing club shows in U.S. cities such as Las Vegas. At the time, Diplo argued that promoters could generate higher profits from DJs over other acts, stating that a band plays, it's 45 minutes. DJs can play for 4 hours. Rock bands, there's a few headliner dudes that can play 3,000-4,000 capacity venues, but DJs play the same venues, they turn the crowd over 2 times, people buy drinks all night long at higher prices, it's a win-win. Meanwhile, other acts gaining popularity during this period, such as Avicii and Swedish House Mafia, held live shows at concert halls and arenas rather than nightclubs. In December 2011, Swedish House Mafia became the first electronic music act to sell out a concert at New York City's Madison Square Garden. In addition to the growth of EDM through live events and the Internet, radio and television were also credited with helping to increase mainstream attention. Analysts noted that sales of Calvin Harris's Feel So Close, and Swedish House Mafia's Don't You Worry Child dramatically increased after they began receiving contemporary hit radio airplay. EDM songs and artists have been featured in television commercials and programs, while some artists have produced more pop-oriented songs to make their work more accessible to a mainstream audience. In accordance with the significant growth in mainstream popularity, EDM became increasingly attractive to outside investors, with some comparing it to the dot-com boom of the late 1990s. The beginning of corporate consolidation in the EDM industry began in 2012. Especially in terms of live events. In June 2012, media executive Robert FX Silliman, founder of what is now Live Nation, founded SFX Entertainment and announced his plan to invest $1 billion for the acquisition of EDM-related properties. His purchases included a number of regional promoters and festivals, including ID&T, organizers of the annual Tomorrowland Festival in Belgium, along with 2 nightclub operators in Miami, US, and Beatport, an EDM-oriented online music store. Live Nation also acquired 2 major EDM promoters, Cream Holdings and Hard Events. CEO Michael Rapino believed that EDM was the new rock and roll of the generation. Advertisers have also increasingly associated themselves with the EDM industry. For example, Alcoholic beverage companies such as Heineken and Anheuser-Busch have maintained marketing relationships with the Ultra Music Festival and SFX, respectively. Heineken also incorporated Dutch producers, such as Armin van Buuren and Tiesto, into their marketing campaigns. Avisa's manager Ash Pornery compared the increasingly commercial EDM industry to the transformation and commercialization of hip-hop, which occurred in the early 2000s, arguing that the corporate world was beginning to catch on to EDM. Pornery further stated that you have an estimated $4.5 billion generated by this music every year. That turns a lot of heads, and that's without the potential of commercializing it even more, which will happen. On December 20, 2012, WHBA, a Boston radio station owned by Clear Channel Communications, transitioned from an adult hits format to a dance radio format, under the moniker Evolution 101.7, and claimed to be the first real EDM station in the country. The station soon changed its call letters to WEDX. WEDX is an extension of Clear Channel's iHeartRadio Evolution, an internet radio channel. Clear Channel also hired prominent DJ and BBC Radio 1 personality Pete Tong to produce content for the station. In 2014, Clear Channel partnered with the aforementioned SFX, in a deal that will see the broadcaster produce EDM-related programming, including a Beatport countdown show across its contemporary hit radio stations, and concert events in collaboration with SFX. Despite the growth in popularity of the EDM genre, some producers and DJs, such as Carl Cox, have objected to the perceived commercialization of dance music, characterizing the styles of many modern EDM acts as stereotypical and cliché, and not representative of the art of DJing. English, Amsterdam-based DJ and producer Dave Clark, in the April 2014 edition of Mixmag magazine, states, EDM is a vehicle for egocentric artists to expand their wallets. Additionally, some house producers openly admitted that commercial EDM required further differentiation and creativity. Avisa, whose 2013 album True featured songs incorporating elements of country music, stated that there was no longevity in the majority of EDM. Dead May 5 has also become a critic of the homogenization of EDM, believing that it all sounds the same to him, and emphasized his diversification into other, more flexible genres, such as techno. In 2014, he released a techno song under the moniker Testpilot for Richie Hawtin's label Plus 8. Furthermore, Dead May 5, during his set at the Ultra event, he scorned emerging artist Martin Garrix by playing a parody of Garrix's song Animals with the melody of Old MacDonald Had a Farm, created and uploaded to SoundCloud by McMangos.
Terminology.
The term electronic dance music was used in America as early as 1985, although the term dance music didn't catch on as a blanket term for the genre, until the second half of the 1990s, when it was embraced by the American music industry with their dance charts, which continue to this day, as well as the consistent use of the term dance music in reference to artists in reviews. In 1995, Nervous Records and Project X magazine held their first award ceremony titled Electronic Dance Music Awards. That is a very good, early example of the need to separate or explain the classification of the music, classical dance, / electronic dance, in the USA, even though the term was not commonly used at the time. In academic writing, both terms, dance music, and electronic dance music, made sporadic appearances. Meanwhile, the term dance music has been used commonly in Europe since the early to mid-1990s in TV, radio and music releases. Due to the popularity and commonplace commercialization of dance music in Europe, the addition of electronic to the term dance music was unnecessary. During the mid-late 2000s, the further establishment of dance music began to occur in the USA and the genre entered the nation's commercial sphere. It was around this time that the term EDM surfaced online. Some users speculate that it arose from the need to rebrand dance music in the USA, following almost 2 decades of social intolerance toward its different genres. Indeed, techno was often used as a derogatory term in the USA. While EDM has become the common blanket term for dance music genres in the USA and many parts of Europe, in the UK the common usage of dance music, or dance persists.
Synonyms.
The related term club music, while broadly referring to whichever music genres are currently in vogue and associated with nightclubs, has become synonymous with all electronic dance music, or just those genres, or some subset thereof, that are typically played at mainstream discotheques. Sometimes, club music used more broadly to encompass non-electronic music played at such venues, or electronic music that is not normally played at clubs but that shares attributes with music that is. What is widely considered to be club music changes over time, includes different genres depending on the region and who's making the reference, and may not always encompass electronic dance music. Similarly, electronic dance music sometimes means different things to different people. Both terms vaguely encompass multiple genres, and sometimes are used as if they were genres themselves. The distinction is that club music is ultimately based on what's popular, whereas electronic dance music is based on attributes of the music itself.
Genres.
Just as rock, jazz and other musical genres have their own set of subgenres, so too does electronic dance music. Continuing to evolve over the past 30 years, dance music has splintered off into numerous subgenres often defined by their varying tempo, BPM, rhythm, instrumentation used and time period. The broadest categories include house, techno, trance, hardstyle, UK garage, drum and bass, dubstep and hardcore.
Production.
In the 1980s, many genres of popular electronic music, including EDM, were constructed with the use of electronic instruments such as synthesizers, drum machines and sequencers, and these genres generally emphasize the unique sounds of those instruments, even when mimicking traditional acoustic instrumentation. Some of the most widely used synthesizers in electronic dance music include the Yamaha DX7, Korg M1, and Roland's Jupiter and SH-101. In addition, the most widely used bass synthesizer is the Roland TB303, while the most widely used drum machines are Roland's TR-808 and TR-909. The introduction of MIDI interfaces allowed personal computers to be used as sequencers to control the instruments, and by the mid-1990s, computers were fixtures in multi-track recording studios, augmenting or replacing dedicated recording and editing equipment. By the early 2000s, computer software for audio synthesis and sound manipulation allowed for bedroom EDM studios to become completely computer-based. Currently the music is now mostly made using software that contains sequencing, sampling, synthesizers, effects, and multi-track recording features. The ability to produce and create has become much easier economically and physically since producers no longer need to buy large amounts of equipment. It sometimes encompasses music not primarily meant for dancing, but derived from the dance-oriented styles. In an April 2014 interview with Tony Andrew, the owner and founder of the Function One sound system, considered a foremost model of audio technology and installed in venues such as Brisbane, Output and Troy, Andrew explains the critical importance of bass to dance music. Andrew also warns that too much bass, as well as too much sound overall, can be harmful and a good sound engineer will understand that there is a window between enough sound to give excitement and so much that it is damaging. For those producing dance music in their home studios, Andrew recommended that producers place their speakers at the perfect eye and ear level, so that the space in between the tweaker and the woofer is between the producer's eyes. This formation allows the woofer and tweaker frequencies to be heard simultaneously. Andrew also recommends the use of dampening blankets to prevent the hearing of sounds that are reflections from walls, and warns home producers about losing bass through the misplacement of the speakers, referring to rooms as just a big speaker cabinet.
Venues and performances.
In most modern music, the artist-producers will perform in front of the audiences, but EDM artists are heard mostly through DJs in dance clubs. From the 1970s to 1990s, clubs would occasionally hire artists-producers to perform live. but on most nights, when people went to dance venues, they would be listening to DJs. Nightclubs and discos such as Paradise Garage and Studio 54 in New York City, or the Warehouse in Chicago, would employ DJs for every night they were open, so-called resident DJs, and have their sound system geared towards the needs of DJs rather than live acts. By the late 1980s to early 1990s, the DJs themselves were the main attraction. Nightclub patrons began to enjoy the abilities of DJs to keep the crowd dancing and the groove going. DJs, although not strictly producers, began to produce more of their own material while trying to match the groove or beat already set by what they were playing. This led to DJs making remixes. These remixes made it possible for DJs to extend songs or make a previous non-dance song danceable. Thus, DJs began to experiment with artists and singers to create material. Suzanne Vega's Tom's Diner remix by the DJ duo DNA and DJ Jelly Bean Benitez's work with very early Madonna demos are prime examples of this practice. Eventually, the recording of DJ sets became highly sought after by nightclub attendees. The DJ would sell the tapes or CD and earn a few dollars from their sale. However, the sound quality of the DJ set recordings were usually fair to poor, since many of them were recorded using normal commercial tape recorders. As this practice grew, more and more nightclubs began to commercially produce DJ sets. Clubs and venues such as Ministry of Sound, Limelight and Groove Jet would frequently release full-length CDs of the DJ sets and sell them in record stores throughout the country. All of this would create a popularity for DJs that would elevate them to the status of a performer or producer. By the 1990s, EDM performers, disc jockeys and producers, started to perform at both indoor and outdoor dance music festivals called raves. As the decade drew to a close, more and more DJs and performers-producers branched out and performed at traditional music festivals, either spinning a DJ set, or actually performing live. The EDM subculture became increasingly mainstream, with DJs attracting crowds of 20,000 or more on a daily basis.
Festivals. Europe.
Love Parade, 1989 to 2010, was a popular German dance music festival that ran until 2010 when it was permanently cancelled after a crowd rush at the Love Parade caused the death of 21 people, with at least 500 others injured. May Day, 1991 present, in Dortmund, Germany. Some May Day events took place in Berlin, Frankfurt and Cologne, Germany. Street Parade, 1992 present, in Zurich, Switzerland. It is the most attended techno parade in Europe, since the end of Love Parade 2010. Boom Festival, 1997 present, in Portugal started out specializing in psytrance, but eventually moved to expand into house and forms of chill-out. Creamfields, 1998 present, based in the UK now tours all over Europe as well as hosting their main event in Daresbury, England. Sensation White Black, 2000 present, started in the Netherlands, spread across Europe, and first made it to the United States in 2012. Dependent on the event, White Black, attendees would dress solely in that color. Global Gathering, 2001 present, takes place annually at Long Marston Airfield, England and has spread out across Europe. Bang Face, 2003 present, is well known as one of the more broader-range dance music events that takes place annually in the UK. QLIMAX, 2003 present, based in the Netherlands, is a leading hardstyle event. Tomorrowland, 2005 present, takes place in Boom, Belgium and has become a notable music festivals due to its elaborate themes and stages. Dane One Festival, 2003 present, in the Netherlands is one of the biggest hardstyle festivals in the world. Weekend Festival, 2012 present, aims to be the biggest EDM festival in Scandinavia. Festival is held in Helsinki, Finland. Electric Castle Festival, 2013 present, is a medium-sized electronic music festival taking place annually at the end of June on Banff's Castle Domain in Cluj County, Romania. Dominator, 2005 present, is the world's biggest hardcore festival. It takes place at the E3 Strand in Eersel, Netherlands.
North America. United States.
Nocturnal Wonderland, formerly Nocturnal Festival, multiple cities, 1994-present. Electric Daisy Carnival, multiple cities, 1997-present. Global Dance Festival, Morrison, Colorado, 1999-present. Ultra Music Festival, Miami, 1999-present. Movement Festival, Detroit, 2000-present. Lightning in a Bottle, California, 2000-present. Decibel Festival, Seattle, 2004-present. Muogfest, Asheville, 2004-2008, 2010-present. San Francisco LOV Evolution Techno Parade, 2004-present. Sonic Bloom, Colorado, 2006-present. Hard, multiple cities, 2007-present. Electric Forest Festival, Rathbury, Michigan, 2008-present. Spring Awakening, Chicago, 2008-present. Electric Zoo Festival, New York City, 2009-present. Wavefront Music Festival, Chicago, 2012-present. What the Festival, Oregon, 2012-present. Kaleidoscope Music Festival, Oregon, 2013-present. Mountain Oasis Electronic Music Summit, Asheville, 2013. Sunset Music Festival, Tampa, 2012-present. Tomorrow World, Atlanta, 2013-present. Decadence, Denver, 2013-present. Paradiso Festival, The Gorge Amphitheater, WA, 2012-present. Other festivals, including Lollapalooza and Coachella, have increased the number of EDM acts represented. Coachella in particular took an adventurous path, giving electronic acts a high profile in a time when they were seldom booked alongside rock bands, in the United States at least. Rawley Bonstein, an MTV music and talent programmer, described EDM as the new rock and roll, as has Lollapalooza organizer Perry Farrell. Ray Waddell, touring editor at Billboard magazine, noted that festival promoters have done an excellent job at branding,